What's up, guys? Roland Wolf here. I'm going to get into some trade recaps from Thursday and Friday, and I'll make it pretty quick here, but I also want to speak a little bit about biotech, which is definitely my favorite sector, hands down, when it's hot, that is. And when the biotech sector gets going, I feel it's a really good opportunity to make some good profits, both to the long and short side. Even though for me, traditionally, it's been to the long side, there's definitely a lot of money to be made to the short side as well. And I'll kind of get into the reasons for that. And biotech's its own animal. It has kind of its own set of rules and its own little quirks. And there are certain things I personally look for when it comes to the biotechs. But I know that's how initially, it's one of the main reasons that I was able to grow my account quite quickly were through a couple of biotechs that were running early on that I was able to capitalize on. So let's get right into the trades from Thursday and Friday. On Thursday, it was NLNK, and on Friday, it was KURA, and that's all I played those 2 days. And between the two, I made, I think, around $11,500, $11,500. And it was good, so we'll get right into it. So Thursday was NLNK, and let me actually get to the daily chart quickly. Here's the daily chart, and you can see it's pretty volatile. It's got good range, and that's something I'm always looking for in a stock that I'm going to play, is can it move? And obviously this thing can move. I think the float's somewhere in the 20 something million, which isn't the smallest, but it's certainly small enough when it's doing volume like this. 20 or 30 million shares a day. There's an entire float rotation. The last several months, it's been lingering at its 52-week lows, which, I mean, it's not necessarily good or bad, but it does leave room for some squeezing, I think. Anyways, Wednesday it came out with some. They came out with some positive update for Keytruda, I believe, which is one of their drugs. It's not that important to me what the drug is. I just want to see how the stock reacts. And we had a gap up from the 8s to the 9s, and a nice rip to 14 this day. So I'll get into this day. This is when I was playing it. This is today, which is Friday, and I didn't get any of this, unfortunately, but I'm not chasing that guy. So let's get into the minute chart so you can see how I played it. So here is Thursday pre-market. The news came out, gap up to 975 950, and right out of the gate, the first 5 or 6 minutes, you had a dollar spike plus to 1075, and that's where the first pullback came. And 1075 back down to 970 or so, and then you get kind of a classic ABCD pattern. Higher lows, grinding up, and I didn't get in on any of this. I wasn't even really watching it too much. I had some other stuff going on. But either way, you have it grinding up back towards 1075, ABCD, and it does break 975. It doesn't rip through 975, and I think one of the reasons for that is we had a whole dollar mark right above it at 11. That's possibly one of the reasons it pulled back at 1075. So even though it does break this high a day, there's still a whole dollar mark resistance above it, and it does show a little bit of trepidation getting up towards there. And so that was the level I was watching, not 1075. And when it does break the whole dollar mark, that's when I was personally interested in taking a position. I didn't take it right away just in case it went over and then ripped back down under. But I did buy on this initial dip here back towards 11. I think my first buys were 11.10 or so, something like that. And I got in, I want to say 1,500 shares here, and almost an immediate rip, 60 cents or so from my entry. And I did sell some immediately into this rip, and that is you'll see that a lot. It's kind of a common theme for me because I do it all the time. And I lock in gains pretty much as quickly as possible, and it helps me stay patient. So that's really important to me. Not everyone does it, but I like to do it. I like to sell in pieces, because once I see that green in my account and I see some realized gains, it makes me much more calm. I know now if I'm cutting losses, at worst, it'll be break even for the most part. And in this case, it worked out because he kind of had a double top here in the 1170s, and then it did pull back towards and even below where my entry was. Dipped under 11 momentarily a couple times, but I was actually risking back here in the 10 at about 1080 was my risk. So I didn't have the tightest risk only because of the volatility. I wanted to give it a chance to hold 11 and then rip from there. So it ended up holding 11 into the afternoon or so, and I grabbed some more. It was either here or here, but I did actually average down a little bit and grab a couple more shares. And then in the afternoon, we had a nice afternoon rip, really, really, really strong. And I was selling in like 200 share chunks throughout this move up. And I was just kind of offloading my position just in case. At every dollar or half dollar, I was kind of dumping shares, locking in gains along the way. And so at this point, I was very comfortable. I think I was down to 500 shares here when it was in the 13s or so. And my initial plan was to swing the rest overnight because of the strength of the move, and it was getting into the end of day. And then we had this huge rip from 13 to 1450, and I was like, screw it, I just sold most of my shares. When we got to this point here, I had 200 shares left, and I was going to swing those overnight pretty much no matter what because I had locked in most of my gains for the day. But instead what happened was we had this violent pullback from 1450 to the low 13s, and I love dip buying. So when something like that happens, for me, it's clear stops were being taken out. It was clear as day stops were being taken out. I dip bought this, and it was kind of instinctual. I mean, it's not the smartest thing to do necessarily when it's an end of day drop like that. Usually there's a reason for it, and if you were in the challenge chat or if you were in Mark Crook's webinar, he was actually saying the same thing. It usually spells the beginning of an end for a move like this, but I have a hard time resisting a good dip buy. So I did dip buy this here in the at around 1350, and I grabbed another 800 shares, which brought me back to 1,000 shares. And I didn't hold on too long because I got a little spooked out, and I didn't know the reason for the drop. Ended up being an Adam Fairstein tweet. He does commentary on biotechs, but had I known that prior to offloading my shares, I would have possibly held it, because when there's a tweet or some report or something like that and a stock drops, a lot of times they come right back up, and that's what happened here. But I didn't know what it was, and I started second guessing myself. But I did make I think about 50 cents a share on the bounce, and I offloaded the whole 1,000 around 14. After that, because of that weird feeling I got being long, I started thinking short again, and I was thinking maybe we'll try to get a little short in here around 1450 and try to catch a little bit of late day fade. And then I had no plans on holding this overnight. Day one, really strong move, even after that violent pullback. So I did get short 2,000 shares at 1440, and I was risking high of day at 1450, and I got a good fade from there on. Offloading, I covered a little bit. I think I ended up with like a 1380 average on the cover and made another $1,000, and that was it for Thursday. But that's kind of how I played it. There was the ABCD that I missed, but I kind of played around with the 11 mark, and then I just sold into chunks throughout this way up. little dip buy because I can't resist them, and then a short, and it actually felt really good. This whole trade felt good and pretty much on point, and I've had several of these recently, and they keep kind of happening, and I'm feeling much more confident going long and short and switching my bias in a matter of minutes or seconds, which has been my goal, especially recently, is to kind of be flexible and be able to go where the chart takes me. So great trade here, great couple trades on NLNK. Obviously I didn't hold overnight. I didn't want to hold a short overnight, and I was proven right this morning when this thing rips from $14 to almost $20. So that's NLNK. Now yesterday after hours, KURA released phase 2 results, positive top line results, and because of what happened with NLNK, I was drawn to it, because when you have one biotech running like this, generally you'll see other ones running. And while I'm speaking about that, one of the ways I look at biotech is through a couple of ETFs to kind of see what's going on with biotech, and that's LabU and that's IBB. Here's LabU here, and as you can see, this is an ETF. It's a Direxion Daily S&P Biotech Bull 3x shares, so it has a multiplier on it. But you can see here, the last several weeks, it actually hit a 52-week high. It broke it, and it's holding it. So biotech's pretty healthy right now. Same with IBB, same exact chart almost. 52 weeks highs, broke, and it's holding. So I know biotech is doing decently. Then you have something like NLNK, and then in the same price range, we had KURA yesterday. Here's the daily chart for KURA, and you can see it was in the 7s and 8s. You can also see that it's got some decent range as well, and it's very volatile. I mean, if you look back in March, the thing was going from 10 to 650 and then back to 950. It moves. Now it's another 5-cent spread, which is annoying, but they can move. And this one certainly is very volatile. So I was very interested after I saw the news, after NLNK, after looking at biotech. That's kind of how I put things together. You take all the information that you have, put it together, and then it enables you to make some sort of decision. So we'll get into KURA trade really quickly. I don't want this to be too long. But it's in the 7s, positive phase 2 results. And you can see the daily chart here. It was in the 7s. Now it was really funky after hours action, and I don't like playing after hours just because I had such mixed results trying to play the news, and especially with biotechs, it's really hard to I used to just see phase 2 results buy. That's what it was. But now I give it time, and I'll show you how we went about this one here quickly. So here is a 5-minute chart for KURA. This is yesterday after hours. They announce their phase 2 results here, positive phase 2 study. And the only reason I didn't really get in is because there was absolute no volume for the first 10 minutes after the news came out, or 15 minutes. I was waiting for volume. I wanted to see what would happen if some volume came in. And immediately it popped up to like $10. The spread was, I think, between $8 and $10. There was a $2 spread. And people were actually buying it at 10, selling it at 8. I mean, it was pretty funky. But once the volume actually did start to come in, you can see here, down here, a couple 100,000 shares per 5 minutes. And it really settled in this 850 range. And it wouldn't go up and it wouldn't go down. So basically, you're halfway between both points, and it's a gamble. But for me, because of NLNK and because of biotech, I was willing to take somewhat of a speculative position, and so I grabbed 1,000 shares at 850 before the market close, somewhere in here. And I only grabbed 1,000 shares because of what I just said, which is the volume hadn't come in, and it would look. I mean, if you look at this, you can just see the indecision. There was obviously a lot of short selling going on, and a lot of buying, but it was still low volume. So I grabbed 1,000 shares, and woke up this morning. Was watching it hold again, and it ripped right out the gate. This is the first 30 minutes of the day. It ripped from 9 to the 13s. And I sold all 1,000 shares, I believe, in the 12s or so, something like that, 12s and 13s. And I was done with it. That's it for me on KURA. But it was a really, I mean, I made $3,000 something in 30 minutes this morning with minimal stress. And one of the reasons for that is biotech. And like I said, when the biotechs get going, they can really run. And when they're not, this same stock would just get stuffed and then die out. So it's you do have to kind of get a gauge for the sector momentum, same as the Bitcoin plays, same as the shippers, same as any other sector. The biotechs do follow in that pattern. But for me, one of the cool things about biotechs is that, I mean, they'll double and triple over the course of a couple days, and then they'll crash, because at the same time, when a company gets done with their phase 2 trial, most of the time they need money. And this is where the biotech sector is very unique. I mean, there aren't many other industries where a company will burn through hundreds of millions of dollars with nothing to show for it. And it's acceptable. But in biotech, that's the norm. I mean, most of these companies have no money, and they are burning through money trying to get through these phase 1, phase 2, all the different things that they need to do. And so they're eventually going to need money. So eventually, most of these plays do end up being great shorts, because a lot of times they will wait to do their financings until after the phase results come out and they're positive. And I'll give you one more example before I wrap this up, but AUPH is a great example, and this single-handedly helped, I think, double or triple my account in the span of a week, 2 weeks. Phase 2 came out here back in March, positive phase 2 results for a lupus medication, and you can see this huge gap up from 3s to 6 and tanked that day. But after that, it was a week and a half of straight squeezing and straight long domination, and I was playing this whole move up. And so essentially it went from 3s to 1050 in the span of a week and a half. And they don't always do this. I mean, this is kind of a unique situation, but they'll run for a couple days at times, as you can see NLNK did today. But sure enough, once it got to 1050, what did they do? They did a financing at 675, and that's kind of the game, and it's inevitable. So you don't want to stick around too long in the biotechs. You don't want to be an investor in the biotechs. You don't want to be holding when they're going to be releasing their trial results, unless you're an investor, and that's what you're doing. But as you can see, you don't have to even be holding it. There's plenty of room after the news comes out to play these. You play the price action, and you get to play the chart, and that's all there is to it. I mean, it's kind of a crazy sector, and I don't want to get too much in depth with it, because I could speak about it all night. But that's what I'll leave you with tonight. Biotech's looking good right now, and that's kind of how I play them. And I was a little bit conservative with KURA and NLNK, really, but that's only because there hadn't been too many biotechs running hard until recently. So I'll be keeping my eye out for the biotechs coming up here in the future, and maybe I'll do a video more in depth on how I play them and what exactly I'm looking for with the biotech stocks. But for now, that's it. I'm going to get some rest, and I will catch you guys on Monday. Have a good one.
My name is Tim Sykes, and I teach people to trade stocks. I am a self-made multimillionaire.
So this is the ideal trade that I'm going to talk about. I want you guys to understand every single aspect of this trade.